All right, better show you under the bonnet. So, yeah, actually, one more thing. So I just got some 14-inch wheels. They're about 14 by 6.5. Some, I don't know, no-name brand, made in Japan. But yeah, nothing special. Just got a polish lip and a rattle can center. Um, yeah, they do the job. Nice and light. I think they sort of suit the era of the car. Um, yeah, let's get this bonnet up and see what's under here. So, no brown top ZC1. That's long gone. So in its place, we've got a B16A2 from an Aussie Mark III CRX, like Del Sol. Yeah. I've tried to keep the car pretty standard looking from the outside, but yeah, under the bonnet, it's been modernised a bit. So yeah, about 160 horsepower from the factory. Yeah, a few things have gone into doing the swap. So completely standard engine, nothing modified at all engine-wise, except for got a header. Sorry, excuse the rust. Yeah, header, got some heat wrap on there. Sort of, I don't know, sort of like an eBay spec header. Into the 2.5-inch exhaust, but yeah, got Harsport mounts. It's passenger side. You're not going to really see the driver's side. It sits under the battery tray anyway. The factory battery location, factory airbox. I've got an intake tube from a DA8, I suppose, Integra. That sort of matches up to the throttle body diameter and to the factory airbox. Throttle cable. Can't remember which throttle cable I use. It's probably the standard EAT throttle cable. Just used up some of the mounts and it sort of snakes its way around. Fuel filter, standard EAT fuel filter. I had to get a custom fuel hose because the fuel rail's fed from the opposite side, so the EAT was fed from this side, whereas on this one the return's on this side. So put the EAT fuel regulator on to this fuel rail. It worked a lot better. So yeah, brake booster hose had to be sort of adjusted. The other thing, radiator hoses. The D series has a smaller radiator hose. So I've modified the intake and outlet of the radiator to be bigger diameter. I've just soldered those up to suit the larger hoses, and that's worked pretty good. Yeah, no air conditioning. This is a factory air conditioning car, but yeah, I haven't got the aircon hooked up. I've actually removed the condenser from the front. It's pretty hard to fit aircon with these Harsport mounts. It is doable. People have made custom mounts, but yeah, I haven't done that. What you're looking at there is the electric power steering pump and reservoir. So you can't see the pump itself, but that's the cap and the reservoir. That's off a Holden Astra. And you've got some power steering hoses here, a high pressure and low pressure line going down to the rack. And that's just because the ZC actually has the power steering pump mounted here, sort of reversed. So the pump's here and the pulley's here, whereas the B series don't have any setup like that. So instead of getting the mechanical pump going, just done the electric power steering. So that's the main power feed, the electric power steering pump, and I've just modified a little Honda fuse to go in that box. That's just fed straight off the alternator, so that goes quite well. The other thing with this later model engine, it's got a hydraulic clutch. So the old ZC, I think it's a CG gearbox, is cable operated clutch, whereas this is hydraulic clutch. So this one here is the clutch hydraulic fluid. So that's running down through the firewall and it's actually a hydraulic master cylinder mounted up underneath the dashboard. It's a bit strange, but that's the only way I could sort of get it to work. Yeah, and you're not really not going to see that at all, but I tried. So yeah, hydraulic clutch. So that master cylinder feeds the master up under the dash, and then there's a custom, just done a braided line. I can't actually see where it comes up, but the braided line comes up, and so it's just, you can just see this silver braided line here. That's the clutch line coming out from the master. It's got a bit of split loom, wiring loom sort of cover over it to stop it rubbing. And yeah, down to the slave cylinder on the front of the gearbox. Also, yeah, gearbox and engine is massive for this engine bay, so couldn't run the standard radiator fan. So I've got a Spal slimline fan there with a custom shroud. Yeah, that's the only way I could possibly get it to fit between the gearbox and the front of the car and the headers. So the headers pretty much touch the shroud. I've put a heat shield. On the shroud there to stop the heat from the headers. Yeah. So as well as that, I had to do a custom hood latch support down to the front cross member. Oh yeah, you can see the fan shroud there a bit better. Yeah. Yeah, probably the only other major thing for the conversion was the speedo. So the speedometer for the Mark III CRX was electronic, so it has a vehicle speed sensor on the gearbox, and that just sends a signal up a wire to the dashboard. This car ran a mechanical speedo drive, so I really wanted to keep the standard dashboard for the car. I didn't want it to look non-standard, so what I've done is I had to muck around changing the gears and shafts on the speed sensor on the gearbox. So pretty much taken the gears off the electronic speed sensor for the Mark III CRX gearbox and put them onto the old speedo drive from the CG gearbox. And now I run a mechanical cable from the gearbox up to the dashboard. So that keeps the factory speedo working. And what it means though, without the electronic signal for the OBD1 computer to operate the engine properly and VTEC, it really does need an electronic speedo signal. So what I've done, I took the dash out. I have modified it by installing a Mark II CRX, like an EF CRX speedo sensor into the guts of the speedo, and it's just a little magnetic reed switch. My speedo, actually being the Japanese model, it had some sort of speedo sensor to operate the speeding chime. So I think the Japanese models have a 100 km/h chime to tell you not to speed. It was disconnected on this car when I got it, but so it had magnets in the drum of the speedo drive, so that was great for me. I just had to install the reed switch, so I just made a custom little sort of mount and got that working, and then that spits out a on-off sort of frequency signal, which I've wired into the OBD1 computer. So factory, the computer in this car was mounted under the driver's seat, but I've the Mark III CRX wouldn't reach down there. I don't want it under there right anyway, but so this is roughly where it sits in the CRX. So I've just mounted it there. You can see the wiring heading up under the dashboard there. Yeah, so we've got mechanical speedo now. So the factory EAT speedo works, and yeah, it spits out an electronic signal back to the computer. So now VTEC works.